All right. Welcome, everyone. It's already March. I'd like to first acknowledge that we're on the traditional unceded territory of the Cowichan people, and that in this room, we have different views, different ways of expression, different emotional intensities, and different roads that lead to conclusions. May we combine clarity of mind with kindness of heart, and may we be impartial without bending to strong personalities. May we sacrifice self-interest for the good of the whole, and may we do our work with love and clarity of vision for the benefit of those that we represent. Thank you. Introduction of late items.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no late items.
Okay, thank you. Approval of agenda. And should I make the delegation movement now?
Mr. DeVerde has just stepped out of the office, or sorry, out of the council chambers to hear from our delegation. So hopefully she's on her way, and he's just going to find out. But if you're comfortable with adopting the agenda as circulated, then we can also just table that item.
Okay, great, thank you. So the agenda, March 2nd agenda as approved. Moved, seconded, any discussion? All those in favor? Adoption of minutes from the February 18th, 2020 regular council meeting be adopted as circulated. Mover, seconder, any discussion about the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor? And our delegation, we'll just table that until our delegation arrives. She's running a bit late. We have a delegation from Dr. Shannon Waters from Island Health for opioid crisis statistics coming up. And we'll move on to Cowichan Leadership Group correspondence. I'm wondering if we could table that until after Dr. Waters' presentation. Is that possible as well?
Absolutely, that would be at council's discretion, and I just have a note here that says she'll be about 20 minutes. So,
okay, so that might not work.
Or yeah, that would you, if council would so choose, you could table both of those items until after Dr. Waters arrives.
Okay, is everyone okay with doing that? Yeah. Do we need a motion for that? So a motion. All those in favor? Motion carries. And we'll move on to the report of our Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you, Mayor Staples. Nothing much to update on Pine Avenue. We'll still wait for weather dependent once for the line painting and landscaping. The Government and Kenneth Street intersection improvements, no update there. That's still not going to happen for a number of months. The Cairnsmore roundabout, the engineering design has been awarded to McElhaney Consulting, and staff have been meeting with them to get things rolling. Businesses and residents in the immediate area have been notified of the project, as has the school district, and will be provided opportunities for input as the design proceeds. Surveying of surface features and underground utilities will be proceeding very shortly. The Duncan Street sidewalk improvements have just gotten started this morning. You may see quite a bit of activity on the street there. And we are forecasting to complete that by June 1st. That did include new water main and a lot of landscaping and sidewalk improvements, as well as some EV charging stations. No change on the laneway between 3rd and 4th. That's still in the design stages. Canada Avenue and Evans sewer main designs, that's still just being reviewed by staff for which sections can be lined and the extent of that, and actually still reviewing whether in some sections it may be more beneficial to open it up and actually do it in a normal form of construction, sort of a cut and cover as opposed to the boring. Underneath the tracks, I think certainly will be likely a lining, but there may be some sections that might just make more sense to do as a surface improvement. Downstairs City Hall office space, no major changes. Staff have been contacting a few contractors to get quotes on the renovations downstairs to be able to relocate staff into the basement, some staff. No other changes on the EJ Hughes. We actually have a meeting later this week with representatives of Cowichan tribes and hear about some of their developments in the area. So it may or may not affect some of the EJ Hughes development. Macadam Park and Rotary Park plan and the Cairnsmore neighborhood plan are still planning on being presented very in the next month or so. We, as you know, had a placemaking project for Whistler Street and 85 Station Street on the weekend, and we've engaged Portland-based Communitecture, Mark Lakeman's company, to conduct a public placemaking design project for those two areas. I think we had some pretty good attendance on the weekend, and very, very pleased with some of the ideas that will be coming forward. We'll be posting much of the ideas and concepts for public feedback on PlaySpeak and other forms of opportunity for comment on some of the concepts that have been created. Nothing much else to report in those areas. We're still working with BC Housing and North Cowichan staff on shelter opportunities and RCP on issues relating to the corridor safety plan and implementation. So if you have any questions on either of those, I can attempt to answer.
Any questions from Council? Councillor Brooke?
Duncan Street sidewalk improvements. The electric charging stations will be on the east or west side?
West side.
On the west side. Thank you.
Questions for staff? Or for Mr. DeVertide this time, specifically? No? Okay, thank you for your update. We'll move on to reports of committees. 8.11, that Council approve the Tourism Advisory Committee budget for 2020 as attached to the March 2nd, 2020 report from the Corporate Services Coordinator. Do I have a mover? A seconder? Is there any discussion about this? No? Hearing none. All those in favor? 8.12, that Council directs staff to work with the Tourism Advisory Committee to review and update the tourism marketing plan, and that Council amend the strategic plan to remove develop a new tourism action plan and add review and update the tourism marketing plan. Mover, seconder, any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. 8.13, Totem Subcommittee 2020 budget, that Council approve the 2020 Totem Subcommittee projects and funding commitments as detailed in the December 13th, 2019 report from the Corporate Services Office or Coordinator. Mover, seconder, any discussion? Questions? Councillor Brooke?
I just wondered, had we determined who was qualified to do the repairs or restoration on the individual totem poles?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Brooke, there will be some more work done on the totem refurbishment policy. I think that might be what you're referencing.
Mm-hmm.
But in this instance, the $10,000 that's allocated for totem refurbishment this year, the carver has been selected, and we will be moving forward.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And does that get announced somewhere at some point in time as well, that information? Or yeah?
Yeah. Again, through to Madam Mayor, we don't typically announce who the carver is, but
okay,
we certainly could with Council's direction if you so choose. Yeah. Okay. I believe, do you know the name of who's doing that work?
Herb Rice, a local artist, it's been contracted to do this particular piece of refurbishment.
Okay, thank you. Reports of staff. 9.1, 135 Kenneth Street temporary parking lot. The Council directs staff to proceed with installing a temporary parking lot at 135 Kenneth Street at the cost of up to $26,500, which incorporates the following elements: a gravel-only parking surface and subgrade improvements, curb stops for the parking. Sorry. Yes. Oh,
my apologies.
No,
if
that's
you
okay.
could call the previous question.
Oh, I thought I did. My apologies. So I'll go back to 8.1.3 and call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. So now we'll move on to 9.1. The Council directs staff to proceed with installing a temporary parking lot at 135 Kenneth Street at a cost of up to $26,500, which incorporates the following elements: a gravel-only parking surface and subgrade improvements, curb stops for the parking stalls, landscaping at the street edge, a sign indicating that the parking lot is temporary while the city considers permanent uses, and a new driveway let down at the center of the property. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this? Is there any discussion or questions from Council? Is there anything that staff would like to say about this? No? It's fairly straightforward? Okay. All those in favor? Motion carries. Mayor's Cafe events. That council directs staff to organize 2 more Mayor's Cafe events in 2020 to be held in various neighborhoods in the community with up to 2 councillors in attendance and with a budget of approximately $200 per event. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Okay. I just wanted to speak to this briefly. I had reached out as well. We'll start with these 2 events. We just did one last Thursday in the Cairnsmore neighborhood, and Councillor Bruce and Councillor Newington were in attendance, as well as Ms. McWilliam and Mr. DeVerti, and I don't know Chris's last name, but our our new planner, and who else was there from the staff? But and the school district representatives were there. There was over 90 people, or approximately 90 people that attended, not over, but well over 70, because we ran out of chairs and had to use benches, and there were 70 chairs pulled out. It was a good evening. I've been getting lots of conversations in grocery store aisles up at the 49th and out around the neighborhood talking to people, and everyone feels like it was a very good first step, and that their concerns were heard, and they're coming up with some really proactive neighborhood solutions to working on different things, and they are already planning with the support of Council Newington, as she's one of the Block Watch captains at Moving Ahead, and so they've already started doing that in terms of moving forward in their neighborhoods. So it was a good night. Lots of things to consider. I haven't had time to sit down and go through all the notes and everything that had happened. It's been a very busy few days, but I definitely appreciated that the people in that neighborhood and how respectful and how everyone was really willing to try to work on what can be done. It felt very positive, and so I don't know if so in terms of this motion, I'd like to move forward with doing this in 2 more neighborhoods, and once we get that sort of those things settled, I'd like to also look at adding a couple of more once those are done as we see how things go, but to start with 2 more. So is there any comments from council or questions? Or hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. And thanks staff for that. That was all it came together very well. New business. So reports of mayor and council. Are there any councillors who would like to make a report tonight? Councillor Capps, anyone else? Councillor Bruce? Okay, Councillor Bruce, do you want to start?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to list off a couple of things that I did. I met with Ann Balding from Duncan Manor, and I know it's not really a city. It's been very clear now that it's not really a city problem, but she's a resident of Duncan Manor, and she's, I believe, trying to get a tenants group together. So having talked to Peter and staff here, I just sort of have encouraged her to do that and take that to the management. And she has concerns that really, and another resident there too, 2 other residents have voiced their concerns to me, so I just encouraged her to get organized, excuse me, and put a little committee together to talk to management or whoever runs the place on a day-to-day basis. So we'll see what comes of that. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I also attended the Cairnsmore meeting. It's my old hometown up there, and listened to the concerns of the community. And of course, there was the mayor and Carol and I attended. On Friday, I attended the Mark Lakeman intro talk at VIU at the Lecture Theatre, and that was a good introduction to both Saturday and Sunday, and I attended both of those, not the whole time, but I got out partially through. But the Saturday was a development of Station Street, which was fun. It was really interesting and fun and good ideas, and that led into Sunday, which was a little harsher, and it was, of course, the Whistler Street development. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Like Councillor Bruce and as well Councillor Brooke and yourself, I also attended the workshops on Saturday and Sunday, and I would definitely agree with you. It was a very fun exercise in bringing the community in to take a little bit of ownership in imagining what they want the community to look and feel like in these two spaces, and definitely two very different spaces. One being right downtown at 85 Station Street, the old Red Balloon site, and what we can do with that exciting blank slates, and then as well what we can do to help relieve some of the issues that are happening on Whistler Street and the surrounding area. And I was very pleased that by the end of the day, you know, talking through the history and the issues, and there's certainly a lot of emotion that comes up as people are feeling quite frustrated with some of the problems they're dealing with. But by the end of the day, I think I heard certainly a lot of hope and optimism around the possibility for some of these solutions to be applied in the short term and long term. So I really look forward to seeing those designs in late April and getting the feedback from the community. What else? Just a reminder that on Saturday, March 7th, we have a couple of different things going on in the community. I know there's going to be an event for International Women's Day taking place in Charles Hoey Park, I think starting around 10 or 11 in the morning. And then there's the opening of the Chemainus branch, the brand new Vancouver Island Regional Library branch in Chemainus, which starts at 1 p.m. on Saturday. And both would be wonderful events to attend, and I plan to be at both of them.
Excellent, thank you. And just to add to the last thing that Councillor Capps brought up as well, there's also 1 Billion Rising happening at City Stage. I'm not sure how many years in a row this is, but it's from 12 to 1 at People's Lunch Hour, and it's open to men and women, and it's an amazing event every year. I really appreciate the energy that goes in behind that event. And that's 1 billion women from around the world and men, and to rise up for women against, or violence against women. And it's hard to kind of, the last few days has been so full that my head feels like that's sort of all that's happened in the past 2 weeks, because it seems like 2 weeks has kind of taken place since Thursday. And I'm definitely didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so I'm really feeling that still kind of in those places of all of those things that happened. I just want to acknowledge all the hard work that the community came together to do at Mark Lakeman's workshops this weekend. And I want to acknowledge the young people that came out. They offered an incredible perspective. And I really felt like that it offered so much to the whole process. And just to have almost one youth at every table made a huge difference. And how the difference between the morning, Councillor Bruce talked about that, you know, Sunday was a bit of a harder go, but by the end of the day, there was a lot of hope and a lot of excitement, and a lot of really like how we can do this together, working together as a community to support each other, and to support everyone in our community. So I think that those were the things that I definitely got out of that, and Friday night was well attended as well. And so I think those are the only things that I'm going to touch on at this point in time. And thank everyone for taking part in all of that. And also just to do a quick clarification about Mr. Lakeman. He's been coming to the Valley for 20 years, but he's been coming to teach here for 20 years. I know there was I don't think he's ever taken a vacation anywhere, but definitely not here. He teaches at the Eco Village every year. He teaches permaculture and other things at programming at the Eco Village. And he first gave a presentation to the Cowichan Valley Regional District in 2004, which for whatever reason I happened to be at that day. And that was the first time I ever heard him speak. And it was also the first time that he had ever begun that work. It was when City Repair just started. And so they had one project that they had done. And to see in 20 years how finally making it down to Portland for my first time to visit there with my family this summer, to see the changes that have been implemented and taken on by the community. There's I believe at this time, over 11 tiny home villages that they've created. I don't know how many hundreds of community projects that have happened through that work. And it's a very unique set of skills that he's brought, and that he's presented to the regional district a number of times. And so it was nice to finally have him come and do something in the valley where he introduced us to this work. And there are other people that do this in different ways. And his is a very unique way of looking at things, and has a lot of the similar challenges that they had 20 years ago we're having now. And they've gone through them and are still going through them. And so it's been a great perspective to have that. And so I just want to acknowledge that, and that we've been getting thank you cards from people about that workshop, and a lot of emails about what everyone took out of that. So I just want to recognize that. And question period. There's no questions. So my question to staff, though, is should we just take a recess briefly and then wait for our presenter to come and then carry on? Would that be the best thing to do at this point in time?
Yes, thank you. I think that would be the best thing to do.
Okay. So a motion to recess until our presenter arrives. All those in favor? Motion carries. We'll be back when she gets here. All right, welcome, Dr. Shannon Waters. Thank you for coming. You're on.
So thank you, guys. Sorry for being a little late. I got like 2 pages, both about, the topic that coronavirus, the hot topic of the times. So I am on call, but I've got it on vibrate now, the pager, so it won't scare you if it goes off. So thanks for letting me come and just speak a bit to what's going on within the community with regards to our opioid overdose crisis. For those of you that I might not have met previously, my name is Shannon Waters. I'm the medical health officer for the Cowichan Valley region. I used to be a family physician here in this community, actually downtown here at the Silver Fern Clinic, and I went back to school to help look at systems levels issues and try and keep people healthy in the first place rather than see them when they were already sick. When I was a family doctor, I would, look at individuals, talk to them. Sometimes I might order lab work or blood work or x-ray or what have you. That was, how I helped assess the situation. As a medical health officer, I often speak to what I'm presenting to you here tonight, our data as the lab work. Like this is the additional information I have through, means such as, being out in the community and seeing what's going on and talking with partners as well to help us see how we're doing with regards to this crisis. So we have recently updated data as of January 27th, and I thought it might be worthwhile to share with you where we're at in terms of this crisis, because I know the city of Duncan, where you're situated, you're dealing with these issues front and center. So when we look at data, we try and get it to a level that geographically that's relevant to our partners that we work with, and local health areas and community health service areas are language that we use when we're looking at the geographic regions that some of this data comes at. So some of the data I'm going to be sharing with you here is at the level of Cowichan Valley South, which in the middle there is Duncan, so that's the Duncan North Cowichan area. Cowichan Valley West is the Lake Cowichan area, and Cowichan Valley North is the Ladysmith area. So some of the data will be combined or divided out into those 3 different regions. When we're looking at populations, if you think about Lake Cowichan, the Duncan North Cowichan area, the Ladysmith area, there can be quite a bit of population variability between those areas. So, from almost 64,000 in the Cowichan Valley South to 6,700 in the Lake Cowichan area and around 20,000 in the Ladysmith area. Want to ask you to keep in mind when I'm presenting some of this data that we have a number, there are a certain number of people who are using substances within this valley. We're all on a spectrum, people who choose to have a glass of wine or smoke a cigarette or drink coffee for that matter are using a substance, to people whose substance use is very severely affecting their lives and sometimes the lives of people who are living around them in the community. When we are looking at the number of, or estimating the number of people who might be using substances in our community, there's a couple places we look. One is there was a study done in 2015 looking specifically here at people who inject drugs in these 3 areas. So they extrapolated from this study and they figured that there might be about 700 people within the Cowichan Valley region. What we've looked at over time now that we have the opioid crisis going on is we've done some further estimations, and we think that number is actually probably 2 to 3 times larger. That 2 to 3 times larger estimation comes from something called the cascade of opioid use disorder. I didn't create that title, but that's what the title is in terms of this study that's occurred here in the province, and here's a look from November of 2017. So this cascade of care that you can see across this graph here is something that was created when people started looking at HIV care. So when you look at HIV care, you have the whole population. Some people are, and then there's a number of people who have HIV. There's a number of people who've actually been tested for HIV and know they have it. There's people who've connected with a physician to get care for HIV. There's people who might have ever been on antivirals for HIV, and then there's people who've stayed on those antivirals over time and have something that's called viral suppression. They took this model and they put it into the context of people who use opioids. So what you see at the far left of the graph is people who have used opioids and then going across the graph. So we have the total number across Vancouver Island, which is 19,248. Then you have in the next bar people who have ever been diagnosed with opioid use disorder, and you have about 9,000 people there. And the colors of the graph look at if that's been over the past year, past 1 to 5 years, or over 5 years. Then the next bar looks at people who have ever been on something called opioid agonist therapy. So this is treatment that can be used for opioid use disorder. So that's about 6,300 people across Vancouver Island, people who have recently been on opioid agonist therapy. Some people try this as a method for getting off opioids, and then it doesn't work out, and they might not continue on it. So that's people who have ever been on. Then you look at people who are recently on opioid agonist therapy, are on it currently, who have been retained in agonist therapy for over a month, over 3 months, over 12 months, and over a 24-month time period. And this is basically looking at, this is a lifelong condition, and within this model, they've really looked at that someone would probably perhaps be on this type of therapy over their lifetime. So you can see what you see is that this cascade of care drops off, and ultimately what we'd like to do over time is make this not such a sharp drop-off, that people who are using substances have the treatments available to them, and they're delivered in a way that they can stay on them over time. So looking at things specifically here in Cowichan, here's the statistics for our overdose prevention site. Correct, yeah. So I know you guys are familiar with our overdose prevention site. It was within the city of Duncan. It opened in September of 2017, and this is a look at the number of visits to our overdose prevention site over the time it's been open up until the end of last year. So what opening this site revealed to us is a need we kind of didn't really know existed within the Cowichan Valley. The site was fairly, not very busy to begin with, and then as word of mouth got out, it became a very busy site. We've had over 54,000 visits to date. Of those visits, there are about 510 unique clients. It's averaging about 2,600 visits per month, and there's about 5.6 overdoses per 1,000 visits. People also visit the overdose prevention site for harm reduction supplies, so that blue line gives you an idea of the number of people who are visiting for access to those types of supplies. There have been no overdose deaths at our site here in Cowichan, and there have been no overdose deaths at any overdose prevention site across the island. Over the time that this site has been open, there have been 313 overdoses reversed. The vast majority of those inside the site, a few outside. This is average between 1 to 35 overdoses per month over the past 12 months. And so these are all events that could have eventually, they could have ended in someone's death. So this is very significant that we've been able to supervise and reverse overdoses 313 up to December 2019 in our community. I'm going to go over this graph. So this takes a look at other places that people in our community might end up if they are in the situation where they've had an overdose occur. And that is, they might end up at the Cowichan District Hospital, or if they're out in the community, one of our ambulances may attend them. So on the first graph there, you can see emergency department encounters, and this is looking actually at the age distribution for each of these. So you can see we have a little bit of a bimodal peak here. Most people visiting the hospital who have experienced an overdose are in the 30 to 34 age range, with a little peak in the 55 to 59 age range. For those who have been attended by ambulance, again, kind of in the same area, highest number in the 30 to 39 age range. And when we look at the deaths that have occurred in our community and the age distribution, you see what we call a bimodal distribution. So there's kind of two peaks, again, in that 35 to 39 age range, but also in the 50 to 54 age range. This is a graph showing, or a picture showing where ambulances have attended overdoses throughout the Cowichan Valley region. One of the main messages of this graph is it's not just one area within our region where this is occurring. No one can really say this isn't happening in my backyard. It is happening all throughout our region. The darker, bigger area there, that's the city of Duncan. This is a graph that goes up into the, a map that goes up into the Nanaimo area. We've had over 200 BC ambulance service attended overdoses in the greater Cowichan Valley region, and there have been over 100 naloxone administrations for reversing of overdoses. This data only goes up to September of 2019 as opposed to December. I'll just mention because it takes a little bit longer to get the BC ambulance service data. This is a look at the paramedic attended overdoses by region. So the top bar is the Cowichan Valley South or Duncan North Cowichan area. The middle light green bar is Lake Cowichan area, and the orange bar is the Ladysmith area. So you can see, not surprisingly, based on population sizes, the most are within the Duncan North Cowichan area, and that's broken out by 2016 to 2019, so 147 ambulance attended overdose events in 2019. This is looking at it by quarters of the year, just giving you an idea as the crisis has unfolded from 2016 to 2019. The number of ambulance-attended overdoses was rising, and we seem to kind of be at a level per quarter where we're seeing about 50 or so attended. And again, I mentioned 147 in 2019 up to September. And here in this graph, Cowichan Valley North and West are combined, because with the smaller numbers, you could be as little as one event if you're looking at this by quarter. Another thing that's looked at is where people go after they have been attended by ambulance for an overdose event. And what this shows is that a lot of people are transported. That means they're taken to a hospital for healthcare services after being attended for an event. But, over the last while, there's a significant number of people who choose not to be transported other places. Their overdose is reversed. They, don't want to go somewhere else, and so they are, BC ambulance attendants may talk to them, but they're basically going on with their day from where they've been attended to, and so that has some implications. And of course, also when people are going to hospital after such an event, it's an opportunity for someone to chat with them and see, where they're at in terms of their life, if they would like to speak to someone about, their use, or if there's other supports that could be put in place. This is a graph which shows the timing of overdose events attended by BC Ambulance. And the main thing, it's quite busy, but the main thing that I wanted to point out here is this last area, which is in the time of 6 p.m. to midnight. So just wanted to highlight that, most of our services are during the day, kind of in the 9 to 5 time range. So when a lot of overdoses are happening in our community that the ambulance is attending, the only place that might be able to provide a service for someone to talk to about where they're at that particular point in time might be the emergency department. A lot of other services aren't available in the 6 p.m. to midnight time frame. This is looking at the number of emergency department visits for overdoses at the Cowichan District Hospital. What you can see is generally kind of a downward trend, which is what we were hoping overdose prevention sites would do, is lessen the amount of individuals coming into places like hospitals where there are a lot of other things that are happening. And we have seen a general trend in that direction. 151 visits in 2017 to the emergency room, 94 in 2018, and 103 in 2019. This is looking at the deaths by health authority. We are the light blue line here, Vancouver Island. We're right kind of in the mid-range. Perhaps not surprisingly, Vancouver Coastal is the community with the highest death rate in this regard. But what is also noticeable here is that over the past, since 2017, we've seen kind of a bit of a leveling other than in Northern Health. And definitely in 2019, we've seen that there's been a decrease in the death rate, which is obviously something that, we're, happy to see, but certainly isn't the whole picture of what's going on with regards to this crisis. What that looks like in terms of the numbers here in the Cowichan Valley, and I want to emphasize here that this data is only until October of 2019, so it's not the whole of 2019. We have a bit of a delay from the information that's coming from the coroner's office as well. But here we're divided into Cowichan Valley South, and Ladysmith and Lake Cowichan are combined together in this bottom line. We had, quite a spike in the number of deaths within the Cowichan Valley region in 2018. So far, for data that we've gotten from 2019, it seems that has, decreased in numbers. We will still receive some numbers yet. I do want to say we're a smaller community, so that gives some definite variability in the amount of deaths that we might see. I don't think this means we're, out of the waters or, have figured everything out by any means, but just a depiction there of where we're at in terms of the number of deaths within our region. Still, by far and wide, most of the deaths have had fentanyl detected. So this is looking at, in the Cowichan Valley for 2019 so far, fentanyl detected in 83% of cases, which is similar to the rest of Vancouver Island at 86%, and these are the rates where fentanyl was detected in 2018 and 2019. Another part of the story is where have people been using at the time that they might have died. And one thing we've seen throughout the story, and it's continuing to remain the same, is that for those who are dying of overdose, the vast majority of people who are using in a private residence. And that's the case for Cowichan Valley South and Cowichan Valley North and West combined here together. So private residence includes, driveways, garages, trailer homes, or homes. And then we have people in other residences or outside. So we still are very much dealing with, the stigma around mental health and substance use. People are, even though we've talked about a crisis going on, people are choosing to, use alone for many reasons going on in their lives. With some of the, coroner's reports we receive, sometimes other people in the home, when their loved one has died from an overdose, it might be the first time they ever know their loved one is using substances. And just a couple more slides here in closing, looking at what else we've done beyond the overdose prevention site in trying to provide support and deal with this crisis. This is looking at opioid agonist therapy clients within the Cowichan Valley, and this is up until November of 2019. So if you recall at the beginning, I was saying that there's one estimate that there's about 70 people who are using, or 700 people who are using and injecting drugs within our region, and then there might be 2 to 3 times larger that amount. When you're looking at the number of active opioid agonist therapy clients, so this is people who are actively going in and receiving prescriptions, not people who have ever been on opioid agonist therapy. We have had an increase throughout the crisis since 2016 of the number of people in our community accessing and actively on OAT. So this is, good news. This is what we hope, one of the ways people can get support if they're dealing with, substance use. And the number of new OAT clients, you can see on the right there, up until November of 2019, we had 131 new clients on opioid agonist therapy in 2019.
Dr. Waters?
Yep.
Can you explain what opioid agonist therapy is?
So that is prescribing of methadone or Suboxone is becoming much more readily usable now. Those are opioids that can be given in prescribed doses through a physician, and it's a safe supply. It's something that you can take kind of in a steady way that can help stabilize your life. You know your doses, when you're receiving them. You, don't have to partake in activities that you might want to need to buy, drug off the street or what have you. So it's a type of therapy to stabilize your life with regards to opioid use disorder. One thing I'll say before this crisis is there was a lot of gates that you had to go through to become an opioid agonist therapy prescriber, and methadone was really the main source that was available. Throughout the crisis, it was realized that the barriers or the hoops that people had to go through to become a prescriber, and that's what this next graph here shows, needed to be lessened, and the methadone perhaps didn't work for everyone, and so looking at other modalities such as Suboxone, which is a tablet, were things that were looked at. So when you look at the number of prescribers or the number of patients who are on agonist therapy, you can also look at the angle of how many prescribers are in our community. And you can see here from the beginning of the crisis, like we didn't know, we had an previously unknown need for an overdose prevention site when our location first opened. We also did not have very many opioid agonist therapy prescribers here within the Cowichan Valley before the crisis. So this is 2016, low numbers of prescribers. And what you can see over the course of the crisis is a large increase. So this line here is around the 30 to 35 number range within the valley of individuals who are prescribing. And when you look at how many of those are new, in 2019 we had up to November 14 new prescribers. What this doesn't say is how many people each of those prescribers might be prescribing to. So some of these individuals may be prescribing to one individual within their practice. And some of them, such as certain clinics we have in town, have a very active, large patient roster that they are working with. So this, it doesn't necessarily translate, directly number of prescribers to number of people that are receiving, but this gives us an idea that we've definitely increased the number of people who are prescribing here in this community. A little bit more about who is receiving this treatment. The top blue lines are males. So the lighter one is males 40 years and older. So that's the highest number of clients who are using this type of therapy within the Cowichan Valley region. Then you have males less than 40, the dark blue line. Females over 40 or under 40, and females 40 plus. So more men are actively engaged in this type of treatment within our community. At the community action team last week, someone asked, why that might be the case. And I gave a couple of suggestions. One is a lot of our health services still in this day and age are kind of designed to be more welcoming to men. Also, if you are using substances, there might be many reasons why you might not want to connect with treatment and let people know that you have an issue with substances. Some of those reasons might be you have children, and if this is known, there's being able to care for your children might be in jeopardy. This is again another look at the male-female split, blue, male, female, green, in terms of the number of people who are on treatment and by age. And that's a quick run through of, a snapshot of where we're at as a community recently. And thanks for your questions. And if there's any other ones, I know that was a lot to run through. I can answer some now as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Bruce?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor. So this whole these people that we're looking at on these graphs here now are all part of the therapy.
In the last few numbers of slides, yes, these are people who are actively within opioid agonist therapy. Yeah.
Okay, and so do you have any sense of how many other people are out there who are not on that treatment, or did I miss that slide?
No, so the estimates we have is that we have up to 2,100 individuals in our community that are using substances. And so if you look here, we have, it looks like around approaching 500 individuals who are on opioid agonist therapy, so there definitely is a gap in terms of those who we estimate are using substances and those who are actively on therapy. So when we're looking at that cascade of care, we definitely have a drop-off.
So those people then, that's 1,500 people, are getting their drugs however they can. Is that correct? They're not under doctor's care or anything. I'm just trying to get a sense of what kind of what's happening out there. And so if you've got 2,500 are on this program, there's 1,500 people that are out there getting their drugs however they can. Is that correct?
That's one way of looking at it. I think some of those individuals, these are people who are only on active therapy. So some of those individuals in that 1,500 might have tried therapy at one point and it didn't work, and maybe they're revisiting going back on therapy again in the future. They are, we don't have a, safe drug supply within the Cowichan Valley. So yeah, people are engaging, in activities that might help them to purchase their substance, and they are purchasing substances that are, poisoned by things such as fentanyl. Yeah.
Councillor Millimus?
Two questions. One, in a few of your slides, and you mentioned about people that inject. Is that just like an oversight, or is that not including the people that smoke, or?
So the one slide where it said people who inject, that's not an oversight. That was a specific study that was only looking at people injecting.
Okay.
It was a hepatitis C cohort study, and that was one of the only means we had previous to this crisis to kind of give us an estimate of who might be using substances in our community. Of course, we don't do a survey on anything like this to say, how many people are using. But now why I kind of went through this here, because this modeling that's happened here now is looking at any substance use, not just injection. And so this is where this estimate of this 7,000 or 700 people are not only injecting, it's actually probably 2 to 3 times larger, so up to 2,100 people.
Right. And my next question, leading off of Councillor Bruce, how far away do you think we are from having a safe supply in Cowichan Valley?
Great question. I really want to recognize, the City of Duncan for putting in a letter of support for a proposal to Health Canada looking at a safe drug supply pilot here in this community. I must say, compared to other regions across the province, like having support from, a city council is huge. Not all communities are in that, type of place. We remain optimistic that we will, get funding through this program. I think with the Cowichan Leadership Group or Cowichan Tribe sits at the table, RCMP, Municipality of North Cowichan. There was letters from other leadership within the valley as well, which placed very strongly with that. So we remain optimistic, hopefully hearing something in the not too distant future. That could go a long way in, helping look at some of the issues as a community collectively we're looking at. Obviously, providing an opportunity for individuals. And so I will say, for those who aren't familiar with safe supply projects or models that are existing in other communities, these are for individuals who have tried modalities such as Suboxone or methadone, the commonly available opioid agonist therapies. And I showed that some people try and it doesn't work out. So for people who have tried and it has not worked out, there are trials that are going on where you can have an injectable type of drug. Again, it's prescribed, it's safe, it's provided to you, and there's a number of projects like that that have happened in some communities like Vancouver and Victoria, and it's beneficial for the client, and one of the things they found is it's beneficial for the community because it stabilizes lives for people who are using, and they don't have to, steal things or, have, chaos in their lives in ways that is so directed to getting their drug of choice. So, that's one thing we're potentially looking hopefully forward to in the future as being another modality that we can have available for people in our community who are using substances as something to help stabilize their lives, get them on a better track, and maybe provide benefit to the whole community.
Do you have another question? Do either of you?
So how long do you see it before we get a safe supply?
Well, I mean, I hope to hear in the next month or so from Health Canada with regards to the proposal we put in. And I think because this is new, novel, it'll take some people some understanding, what this is. I think there would be, some sit-down conversations between the leadership group at the community action table of, okay, we have this funding opportunity. This is, how it could look. Certainly, putting something like this in place, we want to have other services, wrapped around. Would we have, witness consumption, in a location where, people can also have access to other mental health support services where also they could get their safe supply. So there will be, even once we receive the notice, which I hope, could be within the next month, it would take a while for us to figure out as a community what this looks like, where this is located, which may take, some months, and then we could get this going. So, I mean, it's some months away, and we're not entirely sure on the answer we're going to get back yet, but I think, it's definitely something we could get going in 2020.
Can you see, can you see that taking the pushers out of the equation?
Sorry?
Can you see having a
Pushers?
safe supply? I mean, you must really know what's going on out there. I mean, so if there's a safe supply, does that take the criminal element out of it, or help to?
It helps too. I think this goes to show in demonstrating, the way we're approaching drug policy in this country is creating some of the problems that we're, faced with. So it will deal with some of that. I mean, this is a trial which will have, a certain number of people who can take part in it. So it's not that there would be a safe supply for, 700 individuals, but certainly it will be a modality for, a certain number of people, and then we can really see as a community how that helps the individuals, how that helps some of the issues we're dealing with as a community as well. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity, and hopefully we'll hear soon. But I think really with regards to this crisis, this is one of the things that needs to be looked at. Over 80% still of these deaths are because of poisoning of the drug supply, and we can't reach out to people who are choosing to use alone, so we need to look at other options.
Thank you. Are there questions from anyone else on council? I have a question. Thank you so much for, first of all, for all the work that you do, and second, for the presentation tonight and for taking the time to come and explain everything. I know there's a lot going on, and it just helps so much in the way that we are able to understand, and also in the way that we're able to connect with members of the community. And so what I'm curious about is overdose prevention sites. Can you just remind me how many there are on the island and where those are?
So it's in a bit of flux at the moment, but we have two. One's an overdose prevention site, one's a supervised consumption site, and that's a federal distinction.
Okay.
In Victoria, we have one here in the Valley, one in Nanaimo, one in Courtney. up in the Courtney, you might have seen it in the media, Courtney and Campbell River, those sites never had that's bad language, those sites did not have a large amount of utilization, and so it's actually being revisited now how the resources might be better directed. So this was, Vancouver Island is one of the regions where we really tried looking at putting overdose prevention sites in smaller, like suburban or rural type communities. So we didn't really know how that was going to turn out. In some communities in the northern part of the island, it doesn't seem like it's, the greatest option because not that many people are using it. Here in the Cowichan Valley, it is a very well utilized service.
Is it because there's a lot less users there? Like, is there a reason for that, I guess, is my question, that you're aware of, just given some of the data that you've shown us with? Is there anything else that you could do to help us kind of understand that a bit?
Yeah, I think, each community is different. I think the fact that we have kind of a concentration geographically of population density and what have you plays a factor. In other parts of the island, the population is much more dispersed. So, people, it's not feasible to walk to, a location. I think some of that has to do with the model of service and the people who provide the service. I think, the model here, there was staff who made people feel welcome and treated like, a human. And so it's going somewhere where you feel someone cares about you. And so people would, revisit a location. I'm not saying that the staff in, the North Island didn't have that, but I think certainly we have to look at that here in terms of, it's a place where a lot of these people who are never made to feel that anyone cares about them, they see people who care and, are providing support. So those are, some of the things that, we've looked at, but I mean, we can't say for sure, but certainly it's a very varied picture across the island.
And so with that too, is there any way is it harder to collect data in places like that then? Because part of the data collection, if I understand, and I may not, correct me please if I'm not understanding, part of the data collection that you're sharing with us too is because of it does include visits to the OPS, but also overdoses and also hospital visits, right? So does it make it harder, more challenging to collect the actual data of what's really happening in smaller communities or more rural spread out communities because of that?
Yeah, it can. I mean, because they're not seeing and potentially accessing some of the people who are using substances in their communities. But I mean, there would still be ambulance-attended deaths, obviously, and people who end up in the emergency departments. Smaller population sizes are up in the North Island as well, though their death rates, when you try and equalize, the differences in population by looking at a rate over 100,000 people, they do have a high rate, and some of that is because it's harder. There isn't as much access, and it's harder to put things in place when you have a more diffuse population over a larger area.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions right now? And just my final question would be: is there anything? What is it that I guess you need as a medical health care, as our person? What do you need from us? What do you need from the community? If there's anything that you can ask for, what would that be?
I guess I just really appreciate this opportunity to have this time to chat with you. I appreciate the questions because I think it just, this is not an easy topic, and sometimes there's really high emotions and people stop talking. And so I think I'd been talking to Paige and Peter and was like, how about I come and present to the council, some of the data that I share at the community action team level, because I think, this is our lab work as a community. Like, ask me questions, come to understand it, because then I think we can all, just kind of just let the numbers speak for themselves. Of course, the numbers have stories, but when we look at the numbers, we also need to take a very careful look as a community how we're responding to this. And I guess also I'll say, as well as I know, finding locations for some of these services, such as overdose prevention sites, is not an easy thing to do. We, try to do it in partnership with, our community partners. And, one of the things we're really looking at as well is, we're a certain amount of time into this crisis now. It was declared in 2016. We've had overdose prevention sites around since 2017 now. They were, it was put together very organically to save lives. We have been saving lives, but now we also have to look at the reality of, okay, this crisis is still ongoing, and how do we move the community from thinking of like, oh, there's an overdose prevention site and, have certain concepts or ideas around it to like, we're shifting now to this is part of our health services within a community, and how can we, make sure other wraparound services such as mental health and substance use, support, counseling, perhaps hopefully in the future, a safe drug supply pilot, how can we make that all the part of the suite that we recognize as our community as part of our health service and, life-saving services. So just, when we all get, eggs thrown at us at certain points. So yeah, just to remember we're all in this together. And I really appreciate the open dialogue. And, if there's other questions in the future, like if I have data with regards to that, I'm certainly, happy to share that with you. And I just really also appreciate the opportunity and the leadership group giving us the ability to, tackle this as a community together. Because I think in some communities, there's not cohesion, and it's not like we're always cohesive, but certainly in dealing with difficult situations, if we're no longer talking, it's, solutions are even further away.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So with that, we're going to move on to the correspondence portion of our agenda that we moved earlier to wait for Dr. Waters' presentation. And so the correspondence in tonight's agenda is all around the Cowichan Leadership Group work that has been undertaken since, I guess we came together last December and started to sort of form that group, looking at how, recognizing that everything that's happening is happening across our invisible lines in our community, and that we need to come together to work on this, and that we need to come together to advocate for the things that, thank you again, Dr. Waters. Have a good night. That's okay. You're take care. And so that leadership team came together, and Dr. Waters sits on that team, myself, Mayor Al Sebring, Chief Seymour, Chair Spilsbury from the school district, Mayor, the Mayor of Lake Cowichan, Rod Peters, the Mayor of Ladysmith, and also now the Chair of the Regional District, Aaron Stone, our MP, Alistair McGregor, and our MLA, Sonia Firstenow, and the RCMP, Inspector Bear. And so we've been meeting for a long time now, and one of the very first things that we addressed was around this crisis and how do we deal with this as a community. And so I'm just going to say that I did post when our press release came out last week about the work that we've been doing. There's a process that we follow in order to make a case to the minister. We reached out to 10 different ministers, and I'm going to share so that it's on public record what I had posted on social media about this. Some of it was quoted in the newspaper. Simply that to acknowledge what Dr. Waters said as well, that we know that we are in a crisis here. We know that people in our community are suffering. We know that people are angry and frustrated. We know that frontline workers and emergency responders are exhausted. We know that people are cold, that lives are being saved, and that people are still dying. And we understand that this crisis affects all of us in our community in different ways. And we know that we're all doing everything that we can to get the supports that we need, while at the same time trying to deal with the impacts of the current situation. We know that working together is the only way that we can do this to find the solutions that are so desperately needed in the Cowichan Valley. The Cowichan leadership team, as I identified earlier, have been working together to lobby the province to provide funding for various types of temporary treatment facilities, safe supply that Dr. Waters talked about, and wraparound services to meet the varied needs of people dealing with mental health, addictions, and homelessness. The province declined our application, and we're reaching out again. We're reaching back out to the province, we're going up to the federal government ministers, and we're reaching out to our community members. So the details of all the work that we've done are in our agenda. There's quite a bit of information exchanged between the leadership group and the ministers. And we really believe that together we can turn things around, that we can revive compassion in our community. We can create a community and ensure that the needs of every one of us, from the people struggling with addictions to the businesses dealing with the impacts to the neighborhoods feeling overwhelmed, that together we can resolve this. So the leadership group has written to the 10 provincial cabinet ministers. And at this point in time, one of the asks is that each of our councils write letters to the ministers. And so I'd like to suggest, and I'll get to a motion for a recommendation in a moment, that council support the mayor to write those letters to the minister following up on this. And I would also like to to add a new minister into the conversation, the Minister of Jobs, Economic Development and Competitiveness, which I actually had to look up because I didn't realize that ministry had changed names, but that is what it's called. Unless I have no, it was BC, we double checked it. But I'd like to add that minister because of the growing impact on businesses, and I feel like that minister needs to understand that this is a conversation it crosses all different ministries, all different jurisdictional lines on those levels of government as well. And so I would like to add that into the mix. And just to say that the community, that group of people that I named that are on that leadership team, we represent a real cross-section of this community, from sort of every political spectrum to, every end of our community. And as Dr. Waters said, it is, there's a lot of challenging conversations that we have to have, and we're having them. We're having them all the time. And we're not turning a blind eye to any part of this. We're trying to work forward to develop the solutions that we need. And we're asking our community to help us do that, to help us, write letters, read the material. It's in our agenda package. It will be coming out to all the other councils. Will be talking about this at their next meetings starting from tonight. We're one of the first councils to meet. And so this will be up for discussion. We've already had a number of, I'm sure people have heard and seen some of the media that has been surrounding this. And this is important not just for our community, but for all of the communities on the island and in BC and across Canada that are dealing with this. Because as Dr. Waters said, there's some significant things that we need to revisit in order to address this. And so we ask people to educate yourselves around this and to read the materials and understand that those requests were put together by professionals in our community who know what it is that's required. And so that, I guess, my request from council is that I be directed to write these letters of correspondence to the ministers on behalf of our council to support the application that was presented and support funding requests for our community. So if I have a motion here that I can read, is that the best thing to do, Ms. McWilliam? But yeah, at this point, and then ask council for their input.
Sure. If you would like, I'd be happy to read out that motion for you.
Thank you.
So that Mayor Staples be directed to write follow-up letters to the list of ministers contacted in the February 16th letter from the Cowichan Leadership Group, in addition to the Minister of Jobs, Economic Development and Competitiveness, with respect to the specific and ongoing social, financial, and staff capacity impacts, the mental health, opioid and homelessness crisis is having on the city of Duncan.
Thank you. Do I have a mover to that motion? A seconder? And now discussion on any of this. Is there any discussion? Councillor Capps.
Thank you. I would certainly be supportive of any and all follow-up to this. Certainly very disappointing to see the initial rejection or denial of some of these well-thought-out ideas. And I think Dr. Waters' presentation really hits home how important this is and really backs up with the current data just exactly how critical this is for the overall community, not just Duncan, though we are centralized in the center of one of those spots that we saw on the map this evening, and we all know that, how we're being impacted. Yeah, that's all I'll say for now, but I would certainly support any and all continuing to lobby the province for more help with this.
Councillor Bruce and
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If the province does agree, what I read in here was 2.8 million for 10 years, kind of a thing. Was that kind of the numbers that we're talking about?
I believe it was for 5 years.
Oh, 5 years,
yeah,
yes.
5 years.
Okay, so how would that money come into? I see a list of all manner of groups. There's a huge list. How would that money come in? Would that come in to our treasurer here and then be dispersed? How does people see? How do you see that?
So essentially, from my understanding of how this sort of works, is that this is the cost of the operational parts of providing the things that were asked for, and so that if the minister or at any level of government says that yes, we want to see what you can do with this, then that the next stage of this would be for all of the service providers working with Island Health, working with the RCMP, working with all the different service providers on top of that provide services for this region, would come together and they would decide amongst themselves how does this work, and that includes physicians. They would decide how this works. So then they would come up with a proposal that would outline that would then be presented to the government. And I don't know who the funding would go through. That would be up to the provincial government to decide. But my guess would be it would become. I don't know. They could divvy it up into, if this is a mental health piece that someone over here is taking care of, then this funding would go towards that, and all of it would have, of course, it would all be accountable for reporting and follow up, and this would be monitored very closely. But essentially, this is how much money they feel that this would cost to try this. And if the government agrees that, yes, we'd like to see this happen in the Valley, then those details are figured out. And then an actual proposal is written that outlines all of those details, is submitted to the province or the federal government. So it doesn't work. They don't just hand you a blank check and say, go forth. It's going to be extraordinarily structured on how that's going to flow out and to who, to which organizations, healthcare professionals. So that's how it would work. Does that answer your question? Councillor Brooke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I read that we're sorry to hear that our funding request couldn't be met. So was this just an issue of lack of funding, or were they supportive of the plan?
We got the letter that talked about the fact that that the government is putting money into prevention services at this time, which we absolutely support 100%. And prevention services are for something, that is more futuristic in it's thinking ahead of what might happen and making sure that people get the support they need to not go into those places. That does not deal with the crisis that we have happening right now. So that my read on the letter and understanding was that that's where the government's focus is right now, is in prevention services. Yes, and
not dealing with current.
That's my read and take on the letter. I can't speak for the government, but what that letter did outline is that they were investing into prevention services at this time. And so it looked like the monies were allocated towards that. And again, 100%, we all support that.
Mm.
I don't want to think for a minute that we don't. But this is a moment where we need and more
And,
at this time.
thank you.
Any other questions from council? Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. And we'll close the meeting. No, we won't. We're going to go into closed session is what we're going to do. So, that the meeting be closed to the public under the following sections of the community charter to discuss matters related to position appointed by the municipality, section 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, or another position appointed by the municipality. Do I have a mover and a seconder? All those in favor? Motion carries, and we'll take a couple of minutes while we close everything down. Thank you.